All right, y'all. Um, Girl, listen. First of all, I'm embarrassed. All right, I'm embarrassed. Um, I forgot that I had an appointment, and so I had to attend to my appointment. But it went well, and I got what I needed, so I feel really good about it. You have something on your calendar for like months on end, and then you just like forget about it. It was one of those sort of things. Like there's no part of me that forgot about this event, but I'm in the middle of organizing an event for this coming Saturday. Um, I've been running around doing a bajillion things related to that. And, I just didn't have all of my shit together. So, yeah, but we're here now. So, what's up? So I'm not going to do the big long intro that we did last time. I will reiterate for people who, for some reason, are just jumping onto this video and did not see the last one. Some the things that I really reiterated um, during the beginning of the last video. First and foremost, there's going to be a timer on these calls. Our last call in show was 6 hours long. We're not doing that because it took me entirely too long to edit. I also was very hesitant to edit it because I was not looking forward to editing it. And I don't want to resent what I'm doing here. I have to put boundaries down, and part of those boundaries are going to be that every call is going to be limited to 10 minutes. The idea behind this call in show is that I'll be able to have multiple perspectives call in. Every show as of now has been 40 to an hour and 30 minutes long. I'd like to get these to be shorter and shorter and shorter. Um, and we can fit more people in if the calls are shorter, right? So just be aware of that. I know that this is probably the worst one to shorten down, but I really, 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 really do need to be better at that. So I will be timing my calls. I will be timing everything. And I suppose I will very quickly go over the things that I was going over before I remembered that you know, had a fucking doctor's appointment with my doctor today. Um, so the reason I wanted to talk about hypersexuality after abuse, after sexual violence, is because, well, that was one of my reactions to it, and it took me a very long time to understand that that's what it was. And I noticed that when I did my recent video about where I sat down and listened to Glendon Cameron basically admit to being a pedophile, he said a lot of things that resonated with me in terms of like what I know the people that I was with were thinking. And when I spoke about hypersexuality as a reaction to um, abuse, sexual violence, etc., I realized there were a lot of people in the comment section who were like, wow, I had never heard it put that way. And part of why I want to have this particular conversation in this particular way is because I know that for a lot of people, trauma can be very hard to unpack without hearing other people unpack it, right? It took me a while to kind of understand what was really actually going on in my head. And one of the things that Glenn Cameron says in his video is that these girls wanted it. And as I was saying before, I forgot about my appointment. Um, if you were to look at me back then, you would definitely assume that I wanted it. I was looking for it. That is something that I was focused on. Because where I was back then, outwardly, you saw somebody who was actively seeking sex, interested in that, wanting that from people. And you could not look at me and deny that because that's how I was presenting myself, advertising myself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What's taken me a really long time to understand is that back then what I was actually doing was in so many ways an extension of self-harm. It was self-harm that I was doing to myself, putting myself in certain positions, putting myself in certain situations, um, And you just kind of see that clearer with time. And that's also been another aspect of the conversation around the Glendon Cameron video that I reacted to, is just, when you're a teenager, you do certain things. When you're in your early 20s, you do certain things. There's really, I mean, it's not like 30 is a magical number where you mature suddenly, but I think turning 30, and then also, self-reflecting in quarantine, outside of all of these various things I was doing, that were very much reflective of my trauma. But I was, you get into a habit, you do certain things, you accept certain realities, right? And then you've just done something for so long that you've never had to really sit and think about it. When I had time in quarantine, I really started thinking about trauma quite a bit. And there's just something that I just come to understand about myself, is that there were so many things I'd accepted as normal that were not normal, that were definitely not fucking normal. Do you know what I mean? And I just think that, like, this conversation is very much informed by that. Um, this sort of way of looking at yourself from a distance, and sort of seeing, like, holy shit, there were things you did that you felt were totally normal way back when, that definitely were not. Definitely were not. Um, and so that's why I wanted to have this conversation, especially in the position I am in life now, where I have a very positive sex life. Sex for me is something put it this way. I had a friend of mine tell me, or say to me, that he assumes, and I actually still don't know how to feel about this, but he assumes that I have sex with, like, dozens of people every month. It was said way more than dozens. Um, but 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 that was very shocking to me, because I was like, wait a minute, that's not true though. What's actually true is that I no longer have a lot of shame and misunderstanding around how sex is supposed to factor into my life. And so I have no problem acknowledging that I'm a person who has sex, and then that enjoys sex, but I have sex very particularly with very few people, and usually people, always people who care about me. And that was not the way that I had thought about sex way back when. That was not at all the way that I thought about sex during my hypersexual phase of life. Um, and it's kind of interesting because I'm doing a lot of community organizing right now in Los Angeles, and I'm trying to create the kinds of spaces that I really needed when I was younger. In the space where I wanted to sort of explore things, but do it in a healthy way. And so I've been doing a lot of thought about how to make a space not even about doing sexual things, or doing, having just community, which is what I really wanted back in the day. I really wanted community support. I needed that more than I needed some strange man using my body to masturbate. Do you know what I mean? Um, so that I had a lot of there was a lot of stuff that was, like, tangled up in that. And I've been taking a lot of time unpacking all of that, unpacking that sex doesn't have to be something that is, this terrible thing that I'm doing first and foremost. But not only that, but it can be um, a very gratifying thing. It could be something that you do safely and happily, and for mutual pleasure, and without agenda. And granted, I'm in a very different place in my life. And listen, and this is one of the biggest fucking one of the hardest parts of this conversation, and I'm sure other people who call in will probably share this as well, is that I know for a fact, that if I came back in time and spoke to my little, let's just say, 18-year-old self, and I said, bitch, listen, you deserve so much more than this. Why are you doing this? You are worth more than this. Sex doesn't have to be this way. I know you feel this way, but it's not that. I know for a fact that I would not have listened. I know for a fact that I would not have heard it. I would not have heard it. I would have not have digested it. I would have said, "Fuck you. Don't tell me who I am. I know who I am. I know what I'm doing. You can't tell me what to do or how to be because, da 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 da." Um and that's just kind of, and that for me is part of what makes this conversation complex, because on one hand, I really do want for people who are in the situation that I'm in to sort of hear the shit that I'm talking about, and like understanding, my reflections back on how I used to be and how I used to feel, and sort of see themselves and get it. But I also know that I would not have listened to it. I would not have listened to it. I would have said absolutely no. And I know that there are people who like look up to me, which still makes me cringe or whatever. But you know, hopefully some of the things that I say will prevent some people from expressing themselves in the way that I once did, because I know that the hypersexuality that I experienced did absolutely nothing positive for me. I can't look at that stage in my life and say, wow, there was growth I had from that. Really, what it was, and this is the truth, is I was re traumatizing myself over and over and over and over and over and over again. And some of the shit that I did, like someone just, I'm reading in the chat, as a young woman, it's so scary saying no to men. One of the things that I've also understood is that as a reflection of my trauma, and maybe as reflected as in the way that I've been moderating these conversations, is some one of my reactions to trauma has been to um do everything but say no, do everything but do the obvious thing and like walk away, right? And I can't, and I try to explain this when I was first starting to understand this. There's a certain way that I've reacted to things throughout my life that are, obviously is not the right way, right? Like going out of my way to you know like when I told the story about when my phone died and I was at this bar and this biker who turned out to be a really creepy guy drove me home, right? Those were all things that I did, you know, latching on to previous ways I used to exist, previous ways in which I used to sort of be. And the reason why that particular moment in my life was so scary to me was because I literally thought I was beyond that. I thought that I had gotten past that sort of thing. And I wasn't really, at least back then. That happened like 2, 3 years ago. Um, and so it's just something I think is worth talking about, because sometimes you need to hear someone say, hey, I did this too, and this was not great for this reason and that reason, to like understand it, to get why um you know trauma can materialize in this way, and then just be aware of it so that it doesn't impact you in the same way. I am not a therapist, okay? I have been unpacking my own trauma. um Going to therapy was helpful, I guess, in having these conversations and understanding some of these things, because I really recognize how much I mean, I'm 31 years old, you guys. I have consistently spoken about basically my life between the ages of, I'd say, 15 to 21, maybe. Um, that little period of time in my life, um, it impacted me in like a really big way. Um, and I just didn't really understand things in the way that I understand them now. So it's just, to me, very important for me to have these conversations. So, and I also want to reiterate, I also want to state, because some people have, before I open up the call, some people have mentioned that they're proud of me for being able to have the conversation like this. People have been following me for a really long time. Remember all of the various times I've come to YouTube and cried, and like struggled to talk about certain things. Um, you know, I have a long history of, ever since I've experienced that stuff, struggling to talk about it. I can talk about it now because there's a lot of time between who I was then and who I am now. And I've also had a lot more time to think about it. But I know that these conversations have been hard for me to have over the years. And I've spoken about it enough to where I feel comfortable speaking about it. I'm going to open up the lines here in a second, but I want to make a lot of space for people who might be hesitant to discuss it or struggle to discuss it. Um, I know that these are rough conversations, even rougher when I'm putting a time limit on them. But I really want to, before we even get into the calls, thank the people who call in to share their own story, because I've only got mine. I've only got my story. The reason behind this one is to have multiple different perspectives from different people. And maybe your story is going to help somebody else see themselves in you and understand why maybe they did certain things. So, with that being said, I'm opening up the lines, and I want to reiterate that I am going to be limiting these calls to 10 minutes. Um, and we are not going to be doing this for 6 hours. I got some things to do, places I have to be. So I can't be here past, what time is it? It's almost 2. I'm not going to be here past 4. Hey, Google, set an alarm for 4 p.m. I'm I'm dead not going to be here past 4 o'clock my time. So, um, just be mindful of that when we take calls, please. And I haven't had to say this in weeks. I'm going to say it, because look, I just know there's going to be at least one or two. Please don't call in just to say hi. If you respect my work, if you respect what I do, and you appreciate what I've been doing on here, please respect me enough to call in to speak about the subject at hand. Don't call in with questions about the subject. Don't call in with challenges about the subject. I want to hear from people who have an experience with this, a direct experience with this. I want to hear from people who have had to do similar unpackings of their hypersexuality, um, and that sort of thing. And again, as a sex positive person, this is not at all going to be about shaming people for what they've experienced or what they're into or anything like that. That's not what this is about. I want to talk about this specific reaction to trauma, and I'm opening this call up to everyone of all various different genders, experiences, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because I think this is a really wide conversation and also a reaction to sexual violence that is very misunderstood. One of the comments that I got on my Glendon Cameron video is, why am I wearing a choker and a bra? Right? Now, I was wearing a choker and a bra because I was about to go to a golf club before I filmed that video. That's the truth of it. But and I was like, girl, we're not going to change. But there are some people who, their reaction, their assumption to how people react to sexual violence is, you're going to become more modest. You're going to try your very best not to ever reveal yourself in a certain way. But the reality of it is that that's not always the way people react. Some people react that way, and that's a completely valid way. um but then there are other people who sexual violence, at least for, I can say this for me, hurt me in a way that I wasn't able to comprehend. Um, and the biggest way that it materialized in my life at that time is this deep belief that the only worth I had, the only thing I could ever present, the only value and worth I had was my body, was the ability for me to have sex. And there are a lot of you guys who you've not been on my channel for the past 10 years, and so you haven't seen the various ways in which I've shifted and changed. But there was a time where that's how I understood my worth. I was only worth what I could do sexually to a man. And like I've said, it's taken me a very, very long time to unpack that. So, with that all being said, I'm going to take a sip of this carrot juice. I'm going to be quiet, and we're going to take the next call. Or the first call. We've got 12 people on the line. Let me take a sip. I got this big thing of Bolthouse Farms carrot juice. And because I've never had this, is the only flavor I haven't had, and it's really delicious. I'm gonna open up my timer. I'm actually gonna set the timer to I'm actually gonna do 11 minutes because I know that I'm gonna take a bit, but 11 minutes, okay? So, all right, starting the timer now. I'm gonna be quiet, and we're gonna take a call. Hello.
Hello.
Hi there. Who am I speaking to, and what is your true tea?
Hey, you can call me Sai. My true tea, I got a lot of tea. It's so funny when you answered the call, like my heart immediately dropped. Like I was so ready, and I wanted to talk to you and everyone and share my experience, and more so like just ponder and listen to everyone else's experience, and also just share mine. But as soon as the call, opened up, I was like, oh snap, I'm about to talk to like a bunch of people. I'm about to like open up, and I'm still opening up within myself, but I really do want to share this. But anyways, I'm gonna make sure I stay honorable to the time and just start off. So basically what I did want to talk about, or just kind of like reflect on and ask the viewers and and it doesn't have to be answered at the end of the call, but just something, it's something that people have related to this during their maybe a traumatic experience. But I know before I went through my experience, I I didn't know anything about sex or anything. I want to say I was a late bloomer. I just kind of hung out with the boys. I was like a tomboy. I wasn't really around girls like that. I didn't really have a lot of chatter about boys and sex and kissing and all that sort of stuff. And I was okay with that. And I told myself when I was ready, I would do that. And there was no rush. I wasn't trying to rush to grow up or anything. But so unfortunately, I was sexually abused by someone very close to me when I was 18. And before it happened, I just remember just like women in my family talking to me about it, and just in a really messed up way, kind of warning me that this could happen to me at some point in my life. And so when it finally happened, and in the worst way, it's just like, in a way I was kind of expecting for it to happen, which is not fair. It's really not. But I guess, when my family tried to say, hey, it's common, it's happened to us, you might go through this, which no one should have to go through or whatever. But yeah, so when it happened, like I remember thinking, like, why would someone take advantage of specifically that? Like, specifically my body. Like, I couldn't understand, like, why my body? Why? Like, out of all the things you could steal from me, or you could, like, kill my pet or something to hurt my feelings, but my body, right? And I ended up finding out that it was done, just to get back at my mom.
Oh, wow.
The person that she was with at the time. Yeah, they knew that it would hurt her. And it would
Wow.
hurt me. It was very evil. It was very evil. And yeah, so it was just kind of messed up. But fast forward, moving on. Years later, when I started getting into relationships and stuff like that. The weird thing about it is, you know, like maybe a year or two after that, I actually like lost my virginity, and it wasn't a bad time. I didn't like freak out or like none of it came up then. But it wasn't until like, you know, later on in my life, a couple years later in relationships, that I started feeling like, you know, like, okay, well, sex in my head is like a thing about power, right? Because, you know, like people do this to kind of like take power over you. And it's like a win and lose situation. I don't know how I thought of this in my head, but in my head, I was like, okay, well, the reason why it hurt me so much because that person took that power away from me, so I have to take it back. And so I guess I just started, you know, when I became like more sexual and stuff like that, I just wanted to have that power again. And I wanted to be in my hands. So, you know, even in the relationship, you know, I started doing things, and at that point, it wasn't even like a mutual thing. Like, I'm not saying I was getting aggressive, but in my head, it wasn't like, okay, I'm with this person and I feel comfortable with this person and I want to share this intimacy. In my head, it was that. And I could never truly connect with the person that I was with because I just nobody thought about myself, I guess. I don't know. I'm still unpacking it. But so that happened, and, you know, we broke up, and then it settled when I started hooking up with people. You know, I started putting myself out there and carrying myself of this, like, hey, you know, I top in the bedroom, I do whatever I like, you know, I do what I want. Like, you don't tell me what you want me to do or anything. Like, I know what I want, I know how I'm going to get it in a consensual way. But yeah, and so I had this way of thinking for years, like, you know, like my, what would you call that? Bad bitch, like, I don't know, hoe shit. I'm a hoe, whatever, you know, I got power in it. But that was my power, you know. There's power in being a hoe, taking the power. But anyways, it wasn't until recently, and another reason why I really wanted to talk to you and everyone else is when I got into a relationship, and, you know, I really, really love this person. I still do. And, you know, the question of intimacy while having sex started to be like, it was like a real thing, you know. The person I was with was like, okay, like, I love you and I want to show that I love you. I want to share this moment. And I realized that I didn't know how to do that. I had no clue how to do that.
Yep.
I didn't know how to please him. And in a way, I didn't know how he could please me in a way that was a true intimacy, you know. And it caused a rift in us. And I couldn't explain to him what was happening. I guess I was just like so scared of just like being vulnerable, you know, because I was taken advantage of when I was vulnerable, you know. And I don't know, I don't have much words for it, but all I can say is that even to this day, I'm 25, and I've kind of like gone backwards now. Instead of being hypersexual, now I'm finding the fact that, hey, do I even want to have sex? Like, do I even want to share that with anyone? Like, do I even want that? Did I even want it from the get-go? Did I even want that, you know? So now I probably haven't done anything in a couple months, and I haven't felt the need to, because I'm still stuck there. Like, am I ready to do that? And I don't know, I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to unpack it. This is something that just hit me maybe like a year ago, of just how I feel about sex nowadays. So it's weird. I'm redefining it for myself. But I know I kind of sped through that. I hope I
No, you
within
did
the time.
I honestly, like, I've had a very, very similar experience, because one of the things that I had recognized was that there was almost a type of autopilot that I was on for a very long time. And then you get into a situation where you meet someone who isn't actually trying to like get one over on you. You know that they actually care and love you. And it's almost hard to like even know what to do with that. At least it was for me. And I had, having never asked myself, similar to you, like what do I like? What do I actually enjoy? What is something that I could do? Because when you're in an intimate you like loving relationship with a partner like that, these are the things you talk about. But, I maybe had a short list of things, but had recognized that sex was for the longest time not mutual. It was, it's, you talked a lot about feeling powerful, you're a bad bitch, hoe face, da 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 da. And I totally get that. Because I think one of my reactions was feeling like I was in control in situations where in retrospect I very much was not. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
trying to, in a way, reclaim power over a situation where you felt disempowered, which is a very common thing that people often do. But at least for me, in my own experience, I could say that, there was really nothing empowering really about sex for me for a really long time. And so even in the weird way where I felt empowered, I wasn't really being empowered. I was just feeling like I
Mm.
won or I got something. And you
Yeah, I
know,
felt the same way too.
mhm. Mhm. Yeah, so that's a very common response. And like, it's even hearing you um even hearing you talk about this, it's like, yep, I'm seeing myself in your story as well. So um I appreciate you calling in and giving me us your story, because I know there are plenty of people in the audience who probably felt exactly that way and needed to hear someone else say it.
Absolutely. Thank you for, having this platform where, I could speak about it and others. And, I just want to say that, everybody who's listening and even you are loved and you're beautiful inside and out.
Oh,
And, whatever happens, you you'll be okay. It'll be okay,
yeah.
it'll work out.
Yeah.
But anyways, thanks, Kat.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, now y'all. First of all, we need to give them a round of applause for having that conversation. But I also want to applaud them for being on time. That was a perfect length of a call. Um and oh my gosh. Thank you so much for that. Like I reset my timer. It was like a really good call. I got emotional, but thank you so much, Sai, for calling in and giving us your perspective. Again, and also thank you for being mindful of time. Now, if you've just called, we've got 17 people on the line. I'm trying my best to limit these to 10 minutes apiece. Um, I will say that usually I stop the show when I feel like I've gotten enough diverse perspectives. I want to reiterate that this is a call in show for everybody, of all various genders. Obviously, I'm a woman who has sex with men. And so those are going to be that's going to lead and, frame a lot of my own conversations. Um, but everybody is welcome to call in and share their own experiences. And I know how hard it is. Trust me, take a deep breath, run around the room, do what you got to do. Just remind yourself that there are people listening right now who are probably going to be very helped by hearing your version of your own experience because it might relate to theirs. So I'm going to take another sip of carrot juice. I'm going to start my timer. In fact, let me do that now. I have it on 11 minutes, just so you guys know. And I'm going to take the next call. Hello.
Hello.
Hi there. Who am I speaking
Hi,
to? And what is your true tea?
this is Mad.
Hey
And
there.
oh, okay. Sorry, I gotta pause the live. Um,
Yeah.
so basically, my truth is this conversation triggered so many childhood memories for me because I had known I was hypersexual, and so long I had blamed myself for those feelings. And but I had known I had experienced sexual assault since middle school. But when I really thought about my history and my past, I had to sit there and actually reconcile how many times I was taken advantage of by people who knew more about sex at my age. Like I was assaulted. I can't even like count how many times I was. I was assaulted by little girls, like girls my age. I was assaulted by boys. I I was just in general in family. It was just but I didn't as a child, when I tell you I was very young when these things happened. I had no frame of thought to really process what was happening to me because every time I was approached with these things, it was like it was about exploring and
Mm.
um it was I'm sorry. I as a lesbian, a lot of people will assume that my I'm a lesbian because of sexual assault. And it's like, I wish, because I've been assaulted by women and girls who were my age. Like,
Mm.
it was just, oh, fucking God. And so by the time I had got to middle school and I really tried to understand, well, I really kind of understood what sex was, I, I was just like, okay. And at a point, I had to, this is where my hypersexual nature really started to begin because I was also dealing with a lot of compet. So in
Mm.
my mind, my value was very, very heavily focused on a man, and not only just men, but just what I can do for them sexually.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just automatically went into school with the mindset that I have to find somebody to do this thing with. It has. This is what this is what my goal is. And even when I wasn't looking for it with somebody, I wasn't concerned about it at all. With I was just somebody I was close with. Wasn't he? It was in class. I had been assaulted in so many different ways that are just so hard for me to process. Because this guy, he assaulted me in the class, and he just like all of it out of nowhere, he grabbed my chest, and I was like, "What?" And I slapped him, and after that, I never dealt with him again. But I wish that would have been the end of my story because
Mm.
literally that next year I had gotten again with another male peer. Um, me and him were, he took advantage of me and that really broke me. Like, and it broke me in a way I didn't know because that increased my hypersexual behavior. I didn't understand that I was also taking advantage of that because I was like, what do you mean? I know about sex. I thought I was in control because I had so
Mm-hmm.
much knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And so I legit remember going to the next class, like, y'all, guess what I just did? I just gave a hand job under the fucking table. And in my, that I was like, what the fuck? What do you mean? Why were you bragging about that? That guy
Mm.
pressured you into doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
you weren't at all wanting to do that. But
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, I was like, oh my God, this is somebody I wanted so much validation from that in my mind, I was like, this is what he wanted. This was me fulfilling my purpose. This was me
Mm-hmm.
addressing my goal. So from then on, that moment, I only saw myself in that role with him, um, just giving things for him.
Mm.
And we never had actual sex, but it was a lot of, things, touchiness.
Mm-hmm.
And it broke. It was, wow. And after a couple of years, I understood what happened there, but I still hadn't gotten past my hypersexualization in that nature. So by the time I get to high school, I'm like, oh fuck yeah, I'm like really, really gonna get into it. I'm gonna have so much sex. I'm gonna do all I want. But I never had like the real freedom to do those things that I wanted and to
Mm.
explore safely with people I really wanted to do those things with. so anytime I did get that chance, it was not great. And so this leads me up to, like, I'm still not feeling like I was questioning my sexuality. At this point, I was like, I don't really like men. What? Wait a minute. But I couldn't. I based so much of my value and so much of my life up to that point on what I could do sexually for men. And so I couldn't just really say, yeah, I'm a lesbian. And a friend was talking to me, was like, why don't you get a sugar daddy so he can pick you up from school and stuff? And I'm like, whatever. But I ended up doing it any fucking way. And in my mind, what I kept going through with this man I had met, who was fucking 50 years old. I was 17. I was 17. This man picked me up from my school. From my school. I was not lying about my age. He knew fully well. He knew fully well. And not even the fucking, take me to a nice place. Like, this man would have sex with me in his fucking car. All this money, you my sugar daddy, and you can't give me a room? I made a comment about this. Like, you can't give me a room, and he complained about these things. And at the point that I was in so much delusion, I couldn't see what was really happening to me. My body knew very well what was happening to me, because I would break down at the thought of it when he wasn't around. And the one time I let my mind really, really address what was happening to me was when it was a moment he assaulted me, but I was not with him in person. This was over a video call, and he was like, so he made me have a master slave relationship with him. Like, I had a ring and a necklace I was supposed to wear to represent that I was all his. Yes, this is what I mean. Like, I was fucking 17. This is a 50-year-old man. I don't care how mature or control I thought I was. It's wow. Yeah. So this man, he's forcing me to do it, and I keep saying, like, I'm really high. I'm not in the mood. I can't do this right now. And at some point, I black out, and I regain consciousness, and I see that I had done the things that he wanted me to do. And I was like, how the fuck did I get here? How did I get here? And after I did that call, I couldn't handle it anymore, and my body broke down. But I was so far deep, so far deep into it that I was like, I can't end it at this point. And my therapist even asked me, because I had opened up to her about it, and she was saying, like, when do you see yourself leaving? When do you see this ending? And I had no answer for her, because I was so entangled at that point. Like, he had a really grasp on my emotions, because I lost my phone, and after that I had a breakdown, because I was like, I felt like I had lost control. The only thing that had kept me going through the situation was that I thought I was smart. Like, at this point, I was like, I have so much experience. I know all about this. I was like, there's nothing he can do to me. And I know this was self-harm very well, because the first time we met, I said, are you going to kill me after I had sex with him? Because he didn't even expect me to have sex with him the first time I met him. And he was like, because most people don't do that. But I was so entangled. I was like, I'm in control. And in my mind, I was like, sex is what he wants. And my body is what I have control over. So by giving him my body, I have this control, because it's just me, Yeah. And so I was just like, are you going to kill me after this? And he was like, what?
Wow.
No. So, and it's really sad, because when I think about why I even did it in the first place and what kept my delusional heart and my delusional mind going, was that I thought I was going to reclaim some usefulness that I thought I had lost when I was assaulted by my peers at such a young age, and not being able to really recognize how they were taking advantage of me in those ways. So I thought that, you know what, by giving him my usefulness, and by being able to give him this life, it's gonna somehow allow me to reclaim mine. Yeah. And which obviously, no, it didn't. It fucking stole my youth away from me. because I got caught. Thankfully, I wasn't too far in it, but I got caught by the police, naked in the car with him, and, in a deserted place, and that it oh, that completely ended my over sexualization. When I got Yeah, when that happened, I was like, I can't keep lying to myself. I can't keep hiding behind what control I think I have, because no matter how smart I think I am, this man had me doing really bad things. And the shame that I felt, I was like, okay, I'm gonna kill myself. I told my mom at that police station, if you don't take me to a hospital, I'm gonna fucking kill myself. And I meant that because I had so much shame, because I blamed myself for that. I was like, if you weren't so hypersexual, if you weren't the one who was doing all of these things, this wouldn't have happened. But it's like, what about this grown man who didn't even have the decency to give me a fucking hotel, who would pick me up from my high school, who would tell me that he wanted me to do my homework on his lap, who obviously enjoyed having this younger woman, who his wife also, I was having an affair with this man. He had a wife who he met when he was 19 years, who she was 19 years old, and she was from Germany. So this man obviously has a pattern.
Yeah.
And when at that point, I was like, I can't lie to myself. And it's taking me a lot to really understand why I did these things. Especially in this conversation, because I've said a lot of things that is like, oh shit, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
It's interesting that you talked about, you kind of, it ended basically when you got caught. And one of the things that I know in so many ways, even though I would have denied this so much back then, like if someone caught me and said stop, or my friends stepped in, or my parents stepped in, and I feel like that would have been like the wake up call and put things into perspective for me, because in retrospect, I think that's what I wanted, is for someone to like stop me.
Oh yeah, I said pretty much everything I want to say, but I want to end it with this, because I really think this is the most important part to take away from it, is that like I knew what I was doing with self-harm. I thought he was gonna kill me. Like I was so suicidal and just didn't have any self-worth at that point. But when we did get caught, that motherfucker, he turned up so fast. Like, this is a man who had been telling me that he wouldn't move me in. He loved me so much. I'm the love of his life. We're soulmates. Classic abuser tactics to reel you in. And when we got to the police, he was telling them all these things he knew about me so he could build credibility, saying that, no, she was in this willingly. They're in this willingly. And by the time I spoke with him after it, he was like, he knew I was fucking young as hell. He knew this. So he thought I was younger than what I told him. He thought I was a virgin, because when a rape, you tighten. And I would bleed every time he raped me.
Wow.
So he knew and because of that, he thought I was a virgin.
Oh wow.
So he knew I was very young and inexperienced.
Wow.
And by the time I got back to him, all of that lovey-doveyness, like we're in this together, had switched up. He stopped calling me a pet name, all of this, and he was basically saying, if I give he was telling me to give up information about the police, and to saying if I get caught, I'm gonna kill myself. I can't go to jail. You know what they do to pedophiles in jail? And that's when I realized, I was like, okay. After that phone call I had with him, after he admitted to me how he deleted evidence of our relationship to hide his crimes, because he also had child pornography of me. He had videos of us together. Like this, he was sick. He was a sick individual. And when all that came to light, he wanted nothing to do with me besides giving information up to the police. And when I understood that, I said, okay. I told him, oh yeah, I'll tell you anything you need. And I never spoke to him again.
Wow.
Trust your gut, folks. Listen to your body. Don't listen to your head. Listen to your body.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Follow your intuition. It really is trying to lead you away from danger, frankly. Well, thank you so much for calling and sharing your story. I know it was really, really hard. I got a couple of calls to take, but thank you so much for calling in once again. You always have such insightful things to say, so hopefully you can call back another time.
I will. Thank you. I hope I didn't take up too much time. I
No,
love
you're
you.
good. You're
Bye-bye.
good. Thank you so much again. All right. So that was only slightly over, but that wasn't bad, you know. Um, I appreciate how hard it is for some people to have these conversations. So, I won't be cutting people off, for going overtime. And unfortunately, my timer has like this way for me to add a minute if I feel like we need a minute or so. But oof, I'm sure that was, as the chat is saying right now, very cathartic for them. Um, and yeah, I'm realizing that it's probably going to really suck listening to all these different stories and be like, yeah, I felt that too, but that's why we're here, right? All right. So anyway, I'm going to be quiet for a bit. I'm going to take another call. We've got 19 people on the line now. We're getting through these calls pretty well, so I'm feeling pretty good about this. How long have we been here? Only 50 minutes. Great. Um, so I'm going to start the timer, take a sip of this carrot juice, sit up, and then take the next call. All right. Hello.
Hello, hi.
Hi
Wow,
there.
I'm actually on here.
Yeah. Who am I
um,
speaking to?
okay, so that's a complicated question, but I'm going to try to keep that explanation a little bit short. I I am actually a member of a system, which means that I share a body with other people. That's been medicalized as dissociative identity disorder, but I personally believe that it needs to also be demedicalized and treated as a valid identity and not just a sickness.
Mm.
And I'm going to drop a link in the chat just for people to be able to look more into that, because obviously that takes a lot of time to explain and I can't get into that right now.
Mm-hmm.
But long story short, you can call me Aiden. I'm going to be doing my best to speak for the system in general.
Mm-hmm.
So we have been, I'm going to use we and I a little bit interchangeably because it's kind of difficult grammatically to have this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been very, very sexual since we were very young. I don't know if that was a result of trauma, but I like to think that that's just a natural aspect of us that gives us pleasure and happiness. But unfortunately, because we live in a very sex negative culture, especially for people assigned female at birth, there wasn't room to express that in safe spaces, which is something that someone else already mentioned on the call. So like, I think that from the time we were allowed to be talking to other people, because we're also a cult survivor, it's very confusing. We're trying to engage sexually with people, not really fully understanding consent on either end, unfortunately. And a lot of people were really negative because we were kinky early and we had a lot of interests that people weren't used to. And so people in the outside world would just very harshly shame us, not just slut shaming, but saying how messed up and sick we were and that kind of thing for having interests that now are actually kind of common, but just things like asking, to be like slapped or something were considered really, really weird. And so I think that kind of caused us to like retreat into online spaces where our sexuality could really be acknowledged, and there could be space for it, especially because, like a lot of people who survive sexual abuse, there was a need for community, a need for someone who could hear us and say that they loved us and also allow for us to be sexual and have that not be a dirty secret,
Mm-hmm.
And like it became not only what a lot of people are used to of like, talking to a lot of adults online when we were really, really young, but starting when we were 14, we actually entered into what we considered a relationship with a man who was 14 years older than us that only ended like a year ago.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. And, we didn't meet him in person until we were 18, but we were consistently engaging with him sexually all throughout that time, and then met up with him in person several times once we turned 18. And it it's really rough because I think that there was such a fear, like other people have talked about on the call, like there was such a fear of being disempowered. For us, we were very sexual, very genuinely. We had a lot of really intense interests. And so the fear of having the sexual situations we were in that we genuinely did want to be in, understood as abuse, was really hard. But I think that put us further in denial about the things that really were abusive. Like, he really was too old to be talking to us and have a healthy dynamic. And plus, he was just really abusive in other ways that we couldn't see because we had to hide the relationship, you know? And I think it was really hard because, especially with systems, this can happen a lot where some of us, like me, got really unsexual from that experience. It's really difficult to go into sexual situations, especially because I'm trans. So there's a lot of like, I'm not super comfortable with our body anyway. So I like being the person touching, not the person being touched. But like, I know that there are a lot of members of the system that got more sexual from that, who even, you know, found their identity through that trauma processing of, like other people have mentioned, like seeing yourself as just a sexual object. And because we weren't aware of the fact that we were a system for a long time, like 90% of us, if not more, thought that we didn't exist. We thought that we were watching a video game of a girl, you know, which is especially difficult for the trans ones. So like thinking that you're just watching this sort of story, not really believing the world is real, and having a lot of real sexual impulses means that you're going to make decisions that, in our case, they often weren't that we were self-harming in the sense that we didn't want to have sex, but we had it anyway, although that happened too. But a lot more just like, no, I'm not on TikTok, so I just got distracted. Like I just got so thrown off by that comment. That's too confusing. But like,
try not to read the chat.
I'm doing best. But like, you know, there's a lot of like situations where like, and it makes me ashamed to think about it, but because I didn't think that the girl whose body I was watching was a real person, really, because I didn't think I was a real person, there was a lot of situations that were hot because we knew it was abuse. You know, it's multi-layered. And I think that's the thing for people that are just one person in the body too. But it wasn't self-harm in the classical, like, this hurts, but I'm doing it because I deserve it sense. It was more in this, like, the world's fake. I'm not a real person. I'm watching a fake story. And I'm into fake stories where teenage girls have sexual interactions with older men. And I'm into fake stories where, you know, people like cruise in parking lots or whatever. And so there's this like, this aspect of later on, after we'd been gaslit out of thinking we were a system for so long by that guy, and our whole identity was based around what he wanted. And so we built this like paper doll of it. It's really hard to now come to terms with all of the situations we were in that were not consensual to ourselves, that were not, some of them, especially early on, not consensual to the other people because it felt so fake and because we had such a misunderstanding of consent. And it's a lot. And I think it's also a lot because I think about all of those people out there who are still young, who still are wanting to find sexual gratification or friendship or anything out of sexual things that are not necessarily safe for them. And it's true what people have said, like, there's not necessarily something you can tell them, because I want teenagers to have safe spaces to be sexual. I want them to get to explore. I don't think that it's so bad to have a sexuality when you're young. And I also don't want so many, like the vast majority of people with strong sexualities or just a strong need for community when they're young, to end up in these like horribly toxic relationships that just drain you, either with very literal, explicit, clear sexual assault or through long-term manipulation or whatever else, you know?
And I totally get what you mean, because like when you're young, you know, and you're trying to explore something, you know, sexual, I suppose, or trying to investigate something sexual or have a sexuality, as you put it, the most readily available and honestly more eager people to engage with are people who are not great. And I know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and I know for me, like when I had my own little experiences when I was, you know, going to certain parties and things between 19 and 20, or 18 and 20, rather, I really, I didn't really understand what was going on, but I knew that I got a community from it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I was finally in a group of people where I felt I could fully be myself, which was like, and I can say that, and it's like one of the harshest things I've had to reconcile, is how important those spaces were to me when I was young and in need of community, and also how incredibly predatory and abusive they were. Um,
Yeah.
that's what makes it
Because it's
really
so
messed up.
multi-layered.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah,
it
I think
is.
the people really flatten it, but it's like, no, I actually needed someone that I could be sexual around. I got real things out of that, and also it was toxic, and also it was harmful, and also it was abusive of him. It's just so many things.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you for calling in and giving me your perspective. You are so good at speaking about this, and I'm so glad that you were able to introduce in a very good way, by the way, I might add, the DID and things like that. I've actually never directly spoken to somebody with DID, so um, this was really great. I don't think the link you posted went through because I didn't
Oh
see it
crap.
on my end. Um, um,
I'm posting it a few times. Hopefully it will.
Okay, yeah, usually links get automatically like not posted because if they were allowed,
Weird.
they would. I think like YouTube just they just before I even see them, they take them away comments. So
Sure, sure.
um,
Would it be
but
okay to like quickly point someone towards a website then before I get
yeah,
off?
totally. Actually, you know what? If you messaged me on Twitter right now, I could post it. Um,
Okay, that would be great.
yeah, yeah.
I don't really use Twitter, but I can do my
Oh,
best.
yeah. Well, I know my DMs are open there, and that's like I think the quickest way to send me a link. Um, that
Sure.
will actually not that'll actually go through. But thank you so much for coming on and speaking about that. If I ever do get that link, I will post it in the chat and then probably also in the edited version of this that goes up on YouTube.
Thank you. What's your Twitter so I can make sure I actually do it? I'm sorry.
Oh, it's cat_blaque.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate this opportunity. It's been wonderful to speak with you and share my story. Thank you everyone for being so respectful. Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, bye. Thank you. All right, we're doing so good at keeping these calls under, and we've had some heavy. Listen, we've had 3 calls, okay, and every last one of them is heavy. So I need a bit. I need a moment to adjust this carrot juice. I haven't drank carrot juice in such a long time. And I was in the store today, and I was like, "This is the only flavor I have not tried. Let's do it." Is there sugar in this? Oh, there's sugar in this. But it's mostly carrots, so like it's fine, right? Anyway, thank you for calling in, everyone. So far, I'm so proud of everyone who's been able to call in and really give us, in a very concise and direct fashion, your own experiences. I'm just going to continue to say that throughout the show because I know how fucking hard it is to talk about this stuff. And I feel like everyone who's able to call in and talk about this, especially in like a clear and direct way, you guys are fucking badasses. I have to say, you guys are the most badass people I know. Cause I think people really like one of the reasons why I absolutely hate the accusation that people who come out and talk about, this stuff are just looking for attention is because it is literally so hard to even acknowledge that this happened to yourself before you have this discussion publicly. Like, holy shit, is it hard, you guys? I like people really don't get it. It's if you, I mean, very happy that certain people haven't gone through stuff to understand it, but holy fucking shit, it's so hard to talk about this stuff. So, um, everyone who's calling in, thank you so much. Everyone give them a round of applause once again. I'm going to reset my timer, which I've already done, take a sip of carrot juice, and take the next call. Hello.
Hello.
Hi there. Who am I speaking to and what is your true tea?
Hi, my name is Robert, and hold on one second. It's kind of hard for me to hear you. Let me just get out my headphones.
Okay, yeah, we can hold on. In fact, I haven't even started the timer. Drew attention to the fact that I hadn't started the timer.
So my true tea is about it's about my experience as a trans person who also has experienced hypersexuality after sexual abuse. And the reason, I'll just describe it briefly. So for me, and I would like to hear like perspectives on this, is for me, the abuse that I experienced as a child was wrapped up in, sorry, can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you. I think I can also hear like the scream in the background maybe also.
Okay, what about now?
Yeah, it's fine. I can hear you fine.
Okay. So since the abuse was verbal in nature, it involved a lot of that person invalidating my gender in like the most traumatizing way. So that was it. And now for the hypersexuality, that was also wrapped up in some gender dysphoria for me, because what I used to do was I would use sex to manipulate straight men in particular into, like, I would do it to like kind of manipulate them into accepting my gender identity. So I would say things like, oh, you're not gonna like stop dead naming me, then I'm gonna go tell your mom. Oh, you're like misgendering me, I'm not gonna have sex with you. There's a line of people, you know, behind me waiting for me to take your place, right? And so for me, that was, I mean, I'm not proud of that. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I'm not proud of it. But what I wanted to ask you is, since you're also trans, you've also experienced hypersexuality after abuse. So I was wondering, since this is something I'm just now coming to terms with, the abuse, I really only a few months ago I came to terms with this. So my question for you is, maybe could you speak a little bit about if you have a similar experience where transness and gender dysphoria compounded, or the dysphoria and abuse compounded together to create like this uniquely terrible beast. So I was wondering, like if you have any words of advice in that regard.
I mean, so for me, I can't speak to it in exactly that way, because I think one of the complex aspects of talking about this for me is that quite frequently, similar to what our first caller talked about, there are people who will believe that I transitioned or am trans because of sexual abuse. That's a really common accusation thrown at folks. And for me, what's more true is that when I was in the early stages of my trans life, I didn't have a ton of support. My parents were making me feel very unwelcomed at home. The closer I came to being comfortable in my body, the more uncomfortable it clearly made them. And so it really kind of created a perfect situation for an affirming predator to come in and say, well, you can come here and be exactly who you need to be. And so that was kind of my own sort of thing. I definitely have an experience with, you know, maybe certain patterns in relationships, because when I was younger I wanted to be validated, but I don't think I've really experienced exactly what you're experiencing. Because I guess these are not in the way that you're saying it, I guess you would say, because I would never turn to someone and say, you know, if you don't say this or that, we can't have sex with each other. I would settle for the lies and the bullshit and the false flattery that, you know, quickly fell away once something went wrong. But I didn't really hold, in at least that way, my gender up against somebody else's, you know, interest in me. So I don't know if I can necessarily speak to that in the same way, unfortunately.
Well, actually, something you said, sorry to interrupt. But something you said, because you said when you came to those men's houses, it felt like that was a place where you could be who you wanted to be. And actually, that's very similar to how I was. I couldn't make my parents respect my gender. I couldn't make my teachers respect my gender. But when I'm with them, then, well, at least it felt like respect, but really it was just fear, you know? So yeah, I see. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. How much time do we have left?
I've got, let me see, it's about 5 minutes and 30 seconds on the timer.
Okay. So I will ask, well, yeah, well, actually, yeah, you pretty much answered my question. So I'm probably going to just give this time to some other people who could maybe, who also have questions. Because, yeah, actually, I feel so much better now. I've been waiting to get this off my chest to someone. So thank you for having this call. I've always watched, especially when I was first coming out as trans, I watched a lot of your videos. I learned a lot of things. And so thank you for hosting this space. And I will hopefully see you soon. Goodbye.
All right. Bye. Thank you for calling.
Yep. Have a good day.
You as well.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. So one thing that I need to be better about is getting people to, tell us what kind of person they are, where on this rainbow spectrum they fall. That's one thing I recognized in that last call. I was like, oh, I didn't know which which area of the spectrum they fell on, but it was a productive conversation nonetheless. So I'm going to do my routine. I've already reset my timer. Let's start it. Actually, no, let's be good to ourselves. I'm going to go to the bathroom. Then I'm going to come back. Then I'm going to drink some carrot juice. And then I'm going to take the next call. Be right back. Oh my God, I feel so much lighter. All right. Okay. So first of all, I just had this thought as I was on the toilet. Y'all are being so good about this time limit. Sometimes it's hard for me to draw boundaries like that, but sometimes it's one of those someone says stream, stop it. Sometimes it's like good for me to actually put those up, because y'all are doing really good at just being aware of it and stuff. And I'm just, I'm having such a good call. This is such a good show, you guys. Like so far, I was very nervous about having the show, but it's such a good show. I want to reiterate that people of all genders, I don't no we're looking for a very particular perspective in this conversation, but people of all genders are welcome to call in. You are more than welcome to call in. I know that everyone has their own experience with this sort of stuff, so I don't want to. Sometimes when I talk about my shit, like I got so many comments from people in my Glendon Cameron video about, well, women do this too, kind of stuff, and I don't doubt that they do. And as I've spoken before, I have been sexually assaulted by women, but I was groomed by men. So I have a lot to say about that. And I can only really speak from my perspective. So, that's part of why we're having this conversation, to get other perspectives. So I want to encourage everybody from all various points of the spectrum to call in. So yeah, just wanted to reiterate that. Okay, anyway, let's go through the thing again. We've got the timer open. right? No. Oh my God, why is my phone so transphobic? When my phone doesn't do something I need it to do, that means it's transphobic. And it's crazy that no one talks about that. All right, so also going to remind you guys to, if you hear that you're next, please like pause the stream that you're listening to, because I hear feedback whenever we do that. Anyway, let me take a call. Oh, also, I wanted to just reiterate that I'm only going to be here for about another hour. So, just be mindful of that. Be mindful of the time. I am 100% leaving at 4. So, let's not get, too comfy. Anyway, let me start. Timer. Drink carrot juice. Take next call. Hello. Hi there. Who am I speaking to, and what is your true tea?
Hello, this is Starberry again, but I go by Enrica. Glad to be talking to you again. For those of you who have shared your stories, I just want to say thank you, and please do some self-care. For those who are listening and can relate to the stories, please do some self-care, because even though this is a very good experience to have and like a healing conversation, healing is messy. So make sure you have this space to do some self-care, please. I just want to start by saying that.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. But as far as like thank you. But as far as like my experiences, so I was sexually abused when I was 5 years old for like about 4 years. And then as a result of that, it's like ever since then, I've been so horny that I have like kind of like this unquenchable thirst. It's like I always have a sex drive all the time. A lot of the times, by the time I was like 13, I was engaging in like the MVU chats, like the 18 and plus MVU chats and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
where I would go on these MVU chats because I was so sexually horny that I just wanted to get off. And so there were so many times where I met people in like their 20s to 30s, who I would pretend to be like 18 years old, right? But then as we would get closer and we start like engaging like nudes and sex, I would tell them straight up that like, I'm actually 13, I'm actually 14. And there's so many times, especially men, where they'd be like, age is nothing but a number, like the whole R. Kelly thing and stuff. And so at the time, I didn't see it as an issue because like, well, these grown adults are telling me that that's not an issue, so why should I have an issue, right? But then now that I'm 23 years old, looking back at that situation as a whole, it was super predatory. And it didn't help that, like, I think as a result of my sexual abuse, not only was I, quote unquote, mature for my age, but my body matured a lot faster than most people. So by the time I was like 15 years old, I had like B-sized breasts, I had like a full body and stuff, but I still look back at those pictures and see that I was clearly a teenager, I was clearly underage, but then people will use that to like, oh, well, you don't look 16. The whole idea of like, oh, you're more mature for my age and stuff. And at the time I thought, that's a good thing and stuff, because deep down I wanted that love and that validation. And I wanted that attention because, again, like I've been taught to engage in sex as a form of love and as an exchange of love for so long that I couldn't tell the difference between what actual love was versus just manipulation and stuff. And so it took me a while, especially, now that I'm 23, to kind of come to terms with the fact that, like, as far as like the hypersexual side of me, the side that's comfortable with sex, the side that exchanges sex as like a form of love, there's a part of that I've learned to accept and I've learned to love, because otherwise I'd just beat myself up every day. I wouldn't have another reason to live, But on the other end of it, being able to deconstruct that and understand, okay, why do I feel that way? And how can I use it in a way that's not re-traumatizing to me, right? And so I think there has to be a larger conversation when we talk about hypersexuality, how like a lot of it does boil down to sexual abuse, but also that we live in a culture where it's like we teach these young girls and we teach these young people that like sex is the way to a marriage and that sex is supposed to be a sanctioned thing. And sure, you can uphold those belief systems and stuff. But then we have a whole culture underneath that umbrella where it's like sexual exploitation, rape, abuse, stuff like that, that kind of basically, puts these vulnerable children, these vulnerable young people on a platter to serve to these adults who are very manipulative and will use it to their advantage to get what they want and stuff. And so that's why when it comes to this conversation, it's so complex and there's so many intersections. And then when you add on to the intersection of like being Black, being a Black woman, and how we are already hypersexualized as a group. And then we are already being seen as adults as a group. And how like that just further adds on to the trauma, further adds on to the generational cycle and the generational curses of sexual abuse and trauma that leads to a lot of women being hypersexual and a lot of people being hypersexual, but then like the hard work of like coming to terms with that and like deconstructing that being very hard and triggering at the same time. And so I just hope that those out there who are still uncomfortable with the term of being hypersexual or like have a lot of shame that carries around being hypersexual, that it's okay to be hypersexual. There is nothing wrong with being hypersexual inherently. I think the problem that comes up is that people will use that to your advantage. There are grown men out here who will see that, oh, this woman is hypersexual. I can get away with things a lot easier because she's younger. And then there's nobody there to really teach her and understand, okay, like it's okay to be sexual and engage in sexual things. But what are healthier ways of engaging in this? And that's why as part of like my life and what I do, I make it very clear that like, yes, I'm hypersexual, I'm comfortable with it. Here's a healthier way to go about that. Here's a healthier way to spot people who will take advantage of that and who will use that. And so that's all I really have to say. I know it was pretty short and everything, but I just want to say that, like, Kat, I really love it. I really appreciate the work that you do. I appreciate the fact that you open these conversations up and that you are very vulnerable in this, because I know it's hard. It's a hard journey to talk about trauma, and especially in this kind of intersection. And I hope that people are out there who are still figuring themselves out, still trying to grapple with this, that it takes time. Be patient with yourself. Please love yourself. And please understand that there are people out there who are just like you, and that we need to have a community where we come together so that we're able to talk about this in an open and honest way. But thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for calling in. I appreciate your point about the fact that, yes, maybe you're hypersexual, and that on its own is not a bad thing per se, but there are people who will take advantage of that and will prey on that, especially when you're a child, really. That's such an astute point. One of the things that I thought of, especially in some of the previous calls, is, when I look back at those experiences, I can't really say that they were a net positive. And I think one of the keys I think that I'm figuring out in this conversation and others is really just kind of asking yourself, what are you getting out of this? Like,
right.
What is this really? And what do you really want? Do you really want to have sex? Because I know that there were plenty of times, like when I think back at, some of the experiences I had, some of the only positive, in quotations, for, I guess, where we were at the time, ways I can look at it is say like, that were only times that I can recall as positive were like the times where like I wasn't having sex.
Right.
The things that were not sexual, even if they weren't great, they were, those were the things that I wanted. It wasn't so much the sex.
Right.
And so I think that's just a really
Right.
important way of like, if you're in that position, like, actually, it seems like a silly question, but it's like, are you actually having fun? Are you actually enjoying yourself?
No, it's true.
Because I know if someone else asked me that, I would say, yeah, back then, especially, yeah, I'm bad. And all this, but like but I wasn't really. And I think introspection is, something that, takes time sometimes to get to actually do. You know, you have to actually, I think, grow up a little bit sometimes to really introspect in like a real way. But like, you know, if you're in that position now, I would just encourage you to like really ask, like, what am I getting out of this? Am I actually getting something that I'm enjoying from this? And what do I really want? Um, you know, and I'm not at all trying to put anybody's, you know, put the responsibility on the person who's being abused or is, you know,
Oh no, absolutely not.
reacting. It's more so that like I know that I, you know, deliberately did certain things and frame myself and present myself in a certain way to where, as I said, you could only look at me and say, oh, she's looking for it, she wants it, she's out there, right? But I wasn't really asking myself those questions at all. I could not even
Right.
tell you a positive thing sexually from that phase of my life. I can tell you that there were a lot of nights where, you know, I would have sex with someone, they would leave, and I would just cry, just like for hours
Man,
about
I
it,
can relate. I
just
can
feeling
relate, man.
completely like just disgusted with myself. And then I would dry my
Yeah.
tears and then, you know, put on a new layer of makeup or something and be like, yeah, no, everything's fine. Um, and I want this and this is it. But like I wasn't really being real with myself about it at all. Because you know, of course, that's, I think sometimes you can tell this is a response to trauma because it's, you're really in so many ways it's almost like it's you're doing so much just to distract yourself from really being able to
Yeah.
like talk about it with yourself. You know, like I'm doing all this stuff, I'm so busy, da 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 da. But like when you have time to like sit with yourself and you know, sit in it for a bit, that's when it becomes fucked up to you. um I could look
Right.
back and see that more clearly, but I would not have been able to see it at the time. Anyway, I'm ranting. I will. Oop, that is the
No, you're
timer. That is the timer went off literally just then. But thank you so much for calling in and giving me your perspective, giving us your perspective. I always appreciate when you call in. So please do so in the future.
Awesome. Have a good day.
All right. Bye. All right. Let me. That's the first time the timer ever went off. Usually, I'm good at like not letting it go off like that. But pop off, see us pop off. All right. So I'm gonna be quiet. We're gonna start the timer and then we're gonna take the next call. Well, I'm gonna get a sip of this and then we're gonna. Hello.
Hi.
Hi there. Who is this? And what is your true tea?
Um, my name is Nikki. I guess my true tea, I don't know, I've been hypersexual for a very long time. Or it feels that way. I guess I'm only 22, so like what is really a long time? But I was thinking the other day that to me, one thing that was very interesting, because at this point I've kind of accepted that hypersexuality is just like part of me now, especially being someone that's on testosterone. My libido is incredibly high and it's just something that happens. But the nature of my sexual assault for me was very coercive. Not to be like too graphic, but a lot of phrases such as like, oh, if you loved me, you would do this thing. And stuff like that. So I kind of felt like that almost like primed me for the trauma response that I experienced, which was like, oh, well, I guess now if you like people, you have sex with them. And it kind of flip-flopped in a really interesting way where I was like, okay, well, now if I like someone, I have sex with them. That's just how it goes. But turned into nowadays, I am incredibly hypersexual, but completely emotionally disconnected from sex. I actually find like emotional attachment during sex very harmful for me. And I can't do it. I've tried.
Interesting. Is
Yeah,
that
like
we were sort of speaking about this earlier, where sometimes the experiences you have, it's like it just when you finally get there, when you're like truly having like an emotional, intimate moment with someone, it's like it has been hard for me, where it was like, oh shit, like I'm not just sort of autopiloting this, like I actually have feelings about this person, and it's like hard for me to not feel like it's so weird actually. It's like I can think of like there's ways where I can feel so confident and shit when I'm not actually doing the intimate thing, but when you do the intimate thing, it's like scary for some reason. Is it that kind of thing, or is it something else?
um I don't know if it's that necessarily. It more so like it was in my last relationship, which was probably like the only like somewhat healthy relationship I've ever had long term. Where this person was really like, oh, like it's much better for me if I feel like the other person is there emotionally, because I was there mentally, but not like to me it was very transactional. It was like, oh, I want to
Mm.
feel good and I want this person to feel good, and so we're gonna do this thing that I like doing and blah blah blah, whatever. But he was like, I really want you to try if you can to like be there emotionally, and I was like, this is creepy.
Mm.
Like, I don't know, like it almost felt like so foreign that I was just like, you know what? I just don't think that at this point in my life, and I'm not going to say never, because again, I understand I'm like still pretty young, but like at this point in my life, it's just not something that like brings me any enjoyment. If anything, it like took me very much out of enjoying myself. I was like, well, now I just feel creepy and weird, like this, because I've like personally very much like railed against this like I guess when people make sex overly emotional, I think is very harmful to sexual assault survivors.
Mm.
And I think through talking about that so much, like, guys, like if you say that sex is only a form of love, and like if you have sex with someone, you're like tied to them forever, like that is so harmful to people that have been sexually assaulted. Can we
Mm.
please like just understand that sometimes sex is just something that you do? But I went so far past that I'm like, well, for me, it's always just something that I do.
Mm.
Like just to do. And so like trying to go back and be like, oh, well, I'm with someone that I do love and we're doing this thing that everyone says is supposed to be this emotional thing. Maybe I'll give it a try. And then I was like, ew, this gives me like the heebie-jeebies. I don't like this. It was very strange.
Mm.
Yeah, just not necessarily my thing. And then something else, I don't know if anyone in the chat relates to this, but not being able to fulfill hypersexuality is also like incredibly difficult, like through quarantine and stuff. Obviously, like, I don't know, I personally wasn't going out, and I still am not going out and meeting people because it's like a little bit scary to imagine getting sick. And so not being able to fulfill that is like almost more harmful to my brain, even if it's not like a healthy response to have. I'm like, oh, well, like, how am I going to know if anyone likes me if I can't like go out and get laid? It's just very strange mixture of feelings.
Is that kind of like what it feels like it's about for you? Is like it's about seeing like just meeting people who like you?
Yeah, like I guess, yeah, it is kind of like, it is like something that I feel like has made me valuable. Like it has been portrayed to me as like, if you have sex with this person, you are valuable to them, or you're valuable in that moment, you're useful in that moment. And so then like not being able to do that is like, well, then how else can I possibly be useful to anyone? Which is so not true, obviously. But it still is that feeling of like, who am I being useful to right now if there's like no one to sexually satisfy? I don't know.
No, I totally, it's like I think that we've had different paths with this, but I know that when I was in that position, um like I remember that part of my hypersexuality was just simply wanting to feel desired and liked. And going back to sort of the thing I said in my last call, where like sometimes you have to ask yourself, what do you really want with this? When you're in that particular position of being hypersexual and seeking or putting yourself out there, you know, asking yourself, well, what do I actually want? What am I actually looking to get out of this? And I understood, for me at least, that back then part of what I wanted was to feel liked and desired and, attractive to people. And I, I don't necessarily need to actually have sex with people, because I know that for me sex was not a positive thing for a very long time. So I recognize that, like, I don't need to have sex with people to feel that way. And kind of once I did, I think I really stopped having that same exact reaction, because it was like, well, I can't say anything really positive has come from having all of this sex with all of these men. Not really. Um, so I don't really necessarily need that to feel a certain way. But I get it, even though, like I said, I think we've gone completely different paths with this, but um, I get very much how you feel there.
Yeah, it's a strange way of, like, I don't know, just I feel very strange in the way that I view sex now compared to a lot of my peers.
Mm.
It's like, oh, you guys are only having sex with people that you love, and you're not doing it because you feel like it makes you feel like valuable or useful in some way. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't or like anything, like just intimacy in general now, I guess, just makes me incredibly uncomfortable, because like sex to me is just not about intimacy anymore. It's just like a fun activity. It's like when people do like painting classes with their friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, well, yeah, we're going to do this. I'll have a moment of fleeting joy. And then afterwards, I'll probably feel like shit until next time, but it's totally okay.
Yeah, I know what that feels like. It's weird. I mean, this is a great example of just how differently people react to stuff. Because I know for me, like, men are always trying to have sex with me, and I feel like my canned response, especially just from the perspective I am now as a poly person specifically, is just like, I can't muster, like I just keep saying, like, when men ask to have sex with me, and I've got my partners who I have like these deep intimate relationships with, it's just kind of like, why would I ever, like, what would I get out of that? Like, it doesn't, like, the idea just sounds like a chore. Like, I'd be having sex because you wanted me to have sex with you, not because I necessarily wanted that. um and I know that having some of those conversations about sexual violence and trauma has kind of helped me sort of see that I personally very much enjoy sex more when it's close and intimate. But I also, like, totally get where you're coming from, where it doesn't, like, need to be that, you know. And I think that that's like a larger conversation within sex positivity as well. It's like, sex can be just a fun activity that you're doing. It doesn't have to be this, like, shameful, disgusting thing, or on the other end, it doesn't have to be a thing that you do just with people that you love. I think that everyone has to sort of figure out what sex means to them and how it factors into their life, and what it's supposed to be. Because I can look back at, like, the younger version of myself and say sex was not factoring into my life in, like, a way that made me feel good. But now it's the complete opposite. I have sex when I want to have sex with, when I want to have sex with who I want to have it with, and and with the people who have a similar thought process behind sex. That's a big one for me too, is like, knowing that the sex thing that we're doing, it's positioned in both of our minds in the same way. So, like, I don't want to have sex with somebody who's just trying to have a good time, when, like, I'm not in the mood to just have a good time. I'm not saying I haven't, but I'm saying, but generally speaking, I'm usually not in the mood to just have a good time sexually. So I have to know if the other person is just trying to do that. So that's why I tend to only have sex with certain people. But I feel like it's, it's, everyone has to figure out their own sort of path with that. So,
Yeah, and I feel like literally what you described sounds like we have similar mindsets, but on the opposite ends. Because I very much feel like nowadays I only seek out sexual partners who, like, we can be dating. That's fine. But when we have sex, I don't want, like, the term making love makes me want to crawl out of my skin. So I want that person to understand that, like, I hope we're coming from the same place where, like, we are having sex because we're two people who want to have sex with each other, not for any of those reasons that are really great for other people, but like make me feel so uncomfortable. Or at least if they feel emotionally closer to me, that's fine. But don't expect me to like during be like, I love you. I'm like, oh God,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just can't do it.
And what's so funny about you saying that? The partner who snuck into one of my videos not that long ago, him and I have recently started saying I love you. And like one of the hottest things for me, one of the absolute hottest things for me is for him to say that while we're having sex. So it's just so funny, like how, again, opposite ends of the spectrum, but both valid. So on that
Yeah,
note,
because like,
oh, go on.
yeah, yeah. No, I was just gonna say, like, I remember one time someone did that to me, and then like 2 seconds later, they consensually slapped me in the face, and I was like, do you slap people that you love, like, totally as a joke? But like, I was just so out of it from them saying that like now we're like mid-sex and I'm making jokes. It's like, how have we gone this far? I don't know what's happening right now.
I mean, I hope the men who love me also want to slap me, but that's another conversation.
Well, yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
we got to go and take the next call, but I really appreciate you calling in and giving me your perspective.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having all these people on. Everyone has been so lovely to listen to so far.
Yes. Well, I hope you'll stay for the rest of the call-in show. I got to take another call, but thank you so much. Bye.
Yeah, no problem. See ya.
Oh, I'm always nervous about ending the call because I always feel like I'll accidentally like take another call by the time I press it. Um, but we are doing so good. We are doing so good, you guys. So I'm so glad that we've been good about keeping under time. Y'all have no idea how happy it makes me that I'm gonna like after doing this, I'm gonna like sit down and edit these, and it's all gonna be like very easy. Like you have no idea how much easier it makes my job for these to be short calls. Not only that, but like it, like I don't know if I mean usually when I do these calls, I kind of know which ones I want to cut and which ones I want to keep. I'm keeping most of these. So y'all are doing a really really good job, and I want to once again reiterate that I am so thankful for the people who call in um because and share their story because I know it's really really fucking hard. I know it's really 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 hard to share this stuff. I also because I see that there's 24 people on the line right now. um I just wanted to say to you guys that because of the line that I'm drawing in the sand about time, um realistically I'm probably only going to be able to take the next 4 calls. There's, like I said, 23 people on the line right now. um I don't choose who goes next. I don't see anything about them to, you know, it's really first come first serve when it comes to this. And I hate, I wish that there were a different way that this worked, but the way that it currently works is this way. So realistically, um, I'm not going to be able to get through all the calls, and I apologize for that ahead of time. Um, we have not heard from certain people of certain genders, and just put it out there that if you are a person with a perspective that we have definitely not heard gender wise, definitely stay on the line because I 100% really want to hear from you. Um, but yeah, just everyone else that's on the line, just be aware we only have I'm only probably going to take the next 4 calls because realistically, that's how time works. um, so yeah, I'm going to start the timer. Take a sip of my carrot juice, and we'll take the next call. Hello.
Oh my God. Hello. Hello. Hi.
Hi there. Who am I speaking to and what is your true tea?
Girl, this tea, it's potent, okay? You're not even ready.
Okay.
My name is Kirby, and I identify as gender fluid currently and trans. And
Awesome.
I want to speak about my experience of my sexuality changing after my experience with sexual assault.
Okay. That's
So when I
interesting.
was very young, I had this particular experience that impacted me a lot where I was assaulted by a family member. I don't see them as much as, you know, I guess you would normally see like a family member. So it doesn't impact me that much, but it's still in the back of my mind and I still have to see them sometimes and it can be very painful. So before the experience, I identified more closely to being asexual. And afterward, I found myself being hypersexual. And this is so crazy. I was talking to my therapist about this a few days, and I guess it's finally clicked for me. Um, After the experience, I was seeking sexual, like sexual interactions with older men on apps where I shouldn't have been. I was way too young to interact with these men, and they knew I was too young. And now that I look back on that, I'm just so disgusted with it. But after the experience and after I became hypersexual, I mellowed out and I realized I wonder who I would have turned out if I hadn't gone through that, if I would
Mm.
still have identified as asexual.
Mm.
Because right now I identify as pansexual. Um,
Interesting.
and sexual, and I am Black. It's interesting to view hypersexuality after sexual assault within the Black community because I feel like it's not understood well enough. My cousin, she told me a story about this young girl who was very clearly groomed by this older man. And I was said to her, like, wow, that's so horrible. I wonder what must have happened. Um, and she told me, my cousin told me, um, she was just being fast. That's not anything to do with that
Mm.
man. She has all the blame to take for it.
Wow.
And in going through that experience, no one in my family understands the full spectrum of how long it took for me to stop, messaging these older men and stop being hypersexual. No one understood how deep it was or how long it went. So
Hmm.
hearing that from her and hearing her say, like, victim blame her, I was just so shocked. She's younger than me, so I can understand partially why she said it because she doesn't understand it. But at the same time, I was just so impacted. Um, and I see that a lot in the Black community because of how much Black women are sexualized. And it's seen as, like, if you're groomed, it's seen as immediate promiscuity, if I'm saying that correctly. Promiscuity? I don't know. I forgot how to pronounce it. It's seen as that. And it's not seen as you being taken advantage of because Black women have always been taken advantage of in a sexual setting. And I
Mm.
find that very depressing. Um, I don't even know how to fathom how some people can just view it that way and say, oh, this was your fault. And my family does understand some of the situation. So after everything that happened, they almost dismissed me from the family and
Oh, wow.
immediately thought of me as like a slut and a skank, even though I was very young and very clearly being taken advantage of. And the whole thing just leaves an extremely bad taste in my mouth. Um, but your channel, if I could like sing like your praises for a little bit, your channel has helped me come to terms with my sexual assault and my internalized transphobia that I've now since worked through. And personally for me, BDSM has really helped like an outlet for my hypersexuality, which I appreciate so much. I think I've calm down from it.
Mm.
And I'm not sure if your experience is the same, but it's definitely been like a healthier outlet for me to like channel it through. And I'm just so grateful for having your channel and having your community and being able to talk, because I feel like I'm finally ready to say my story. My heart was beating like so fast before I got on the phone.
Oh,
And I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to speak with you and everyone else like in the chat. And hopefully some people can gain more insight into what it's like with hypersexuality after violence.
yeah. Yeah. I think for me, when it comes to, well, first of all, thank you for saying that. Side note. Thank you for tuning in and listening to my stuff and appreciating it. It means an awful lot to me because I like to think of myself as making videos for people who, need, you know, a different perspective, and also to see some of the things I've experienced, reflected in them, or see some of the things they've experienced
Mm-hmm.
reflected in me rather. Um, but I would say that for me, BDSM has been the first kind of thing in my life that really made me recognize that I had a choice. That sex was not this like spoken, thing, that like there was no
Mm-hmm.
contract. I don't have to do this. I don't have to, engage in that. That,
Mm-hmm.
it can be, totally not sexual, and it could be sexual. It could be whatever you want it to be. It's up to you to decide that. And, it's such a simple thing. It's saying it out loud. It sounds like such a simple, obvious thing, but I think people don't get, and I feel like people will struggle to understand this for a while, that a lot of us don't grow up with the message that we have a choice, like it's so um you know we're often influenced to just sort of see a certain path as the path. And for me, I know that sexual compliance with men was for the longest time just like a thing I should do, of course. And
Definitely. Definitely.
BDSM was like, oh, no, actually you could have a conversation about it. You can you can come to an understanding and a mutual respect of what's going to happen and what's not going to happen. And oh my God, was that not a description of sex for, I would say, at this point in my life, most of my life? Like, it took for me to get, out of my last monogamous relationship, and to like actually meet my first polyamorous BDSM boyfriend. I'm not saying that this is like
Oh.
the solution, but the first man I dated was poly and also introduced me an ethical way to BDSM. And it was just one of those like things where it was like, oh shit, like we can talk about this. This is not this thing that I, don't have a say in. um I can actually
Definitely.
say no. I can actually say yes. I can actually define what I want and what I don't want, and that's okay. We might have different boundaries and different understandings and different interests, but that's okay, right? Like, I think for a long time in my life, I was like mortified of the idea of not, having the right way of approaching it. Um, but I feel so much more like liberated now, understanding that I have the choice. Um, and I guess it's like, to me, again, saying that out loud, it seems like such an obvious thing, but it was not for me for most of my life. So, you know, that's my answer to your question for sure.
I
Um,
oh my God, I appreciate it so much.
oh, well, thank you for calling in and giving me your perspective. It really, really added. There are so many things to say about all the things you said, especially when it comes to specifically how hypersexuality is being seen in among Black folks. Like when you talked about being young and fast, I was like, yep, I've heard people
Yeah,
talk
I
like that,
hate that
where
phrase.
she's just young and fat. It's like, no, she's probably going through some shit. And honestly, like I have people who I know in not the BDSM community so much, but in sex positive spaces where, I do, I'm, especially when they're very young, I'm slightly concerned about them, because I know that sometimes when somebody is super, super sexual like that, it does come from um a bad place, where maybe they just need to hear that you don't need to do that to be accepted, and loved and feel worth. But those are hard conversations to have for sure. Um,
Yeah,
but
and thank you so much for doing this.
yeah. Well, yes. Thank you for adding to the conversation. It really means a lot. It really means a lot. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Ooh, and then the timer went off. I've been really good at like not letting it go totally off. Um, all right. And I see somebody's trying to criticize BDSM in the chat. We're not here to talk about that. Another conversation. I don't agree. But it is what it is. Anyway, um, I'm going to pause. We've got time for 3 more calls. There's 20 people on the line. I'm so sorry. I'm just again gonna reiterate that we are not gonna be able to have, you know, we're not going to be able to, answer all these calls. Please don't, hate me too much. But there's only so much time in the day, and I have to draw boundaries, and I have to say no. Ironically, that is also part of this conversation. But anyway, I'm gonna be quiet. We're going to start this timer. Take a sip of carrot juice, and take the next call. Hello.
Hey,
Hi there. Who am I speaking to, and what is your true tea?
I'm Nate. I'm a trans guy, and I've got brain damage, which also causes hypersexuality, on top of
Whoa.
everything that I've gone through. Yeah, I had a brain tumor when I was 5, and they removed like 10 to 15% of my right frontal lobe, which controls emotions. And I don't know if you know this or anybody in the chat knows this, but when you have brain damage, that can cause hypersexuality.
I've never heard
So
of that. That is
yeah,
surprising. I just learned something
it's
new.
quite common. I actually met another trans guy like a week or two ago who had brain damage. And I told him, and he had no idea. And he's like, "Yeah, that explains a lot." Um, but so my story is, I was pretty good. I was just the odd kid, so I never got a chance to really explore like sex until I was like 21. I was pretty good about I noticed that um there was something wrong. Like I had hypersexuality. Like my thoughts would always default to sex. Like I would start sexualizing people just like anybody on the street, and it was just like, in my head. And I was really like repulsed by that. So I just kind of was like, you know what, I probably will be addicted to sex if I have sex with anybody, so I should stay away. And
Mm.
when I was 21, I dated this other trans guy. Neither of us knew we were trans. So it was like a lesbian relationship, for like, I guess, a lack of a better term here. And he was really abusive, and ended up raping me. So it was like a really bad end to the relationship. After that, like I tried to stay away from girls, but like I couldn't say no, of course. Like I see that that's kind of a trend of what happens. And next couple girls I was with were really abusive too. And I it got so bad that I would start seizing. Like I didn't know I had epilepsy because I used to have really small seizures, and then I started having stress-induced seizures, and then I now have like really bad epilepsy. Like I have to take meds for it and shit. I didn't have to before. Um, and so I can't like have sex with any girls because I'll just seize. Like even if it's
Oh
positive.
wow.
Um, yeah. So I don't really like men, but I kind of like, because I have sexuality, like hypersexuality, I just kind of went to men because I felt like I had to get a release somehow. So I started fooling around on Grinder after I started taking testosterone, and it kind of made me feel more accepting of my gender because they all saw me as men, whereas men just like would really sexualize me as a woman before I started taking testosterone. And so it wasn't terrible, but I also put myself into some really dangerous situations, like dangerous like physically and emotionally. Um so I just kind of want to put it out there that like, everybody should stay safe. Like it's okay to make mistakes, but just and not everything you're going to do is going to be a mistake, but you should stay safe when you do it.
Mm.
Um so I mean, yeah, that's kind of just what I wanted to say was, you know, um just be careful.
Yeah, and stay safe. That's a
Yeah.
good one, cause looking back, like one of the ways in which I like fully understand it, like my own hypersexuality is um this type of self-harm is because I was not being safe, like at all
Yeah.
whatsoever.
I think that I think like sexual hypersexual. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Mhm.
Sorry, I do that sometimes.
Oh no, you're fine.
Um,
I was gonna say, and I think that was the point. Like I was deliberately like doing incredibly risky, scary things because I didn't value myself. And even though I would not have said, yes, I would like to be hurt now, I think I would have, I think internally in the back of my head, that's probably what was going on. And I did not
y-
see that as clearly as I do now. So yeah, be safe, like it's especially on these grinder streets, y'all. I've never really used
yeah.
grinder, so I don't really know what but I know that there's a lot of
Oh
questionable
yeah, there's
characters.
guys down there that will like, they look for like sissy guys, and like I'm pretty fucking masculine. Like I'm a carbon copy of my dad. He's like, typical blue collar guy. And I have to explain to them like, yo, you're hitting me up and I'm not what you're looking for. Like, I'm a trans guy, I know that, and I'm like, pre-op, but don't put me in a box there. And, sometimes I'll start accepting like, what they, want of me because I just like, I kind of give up and I'm like, I just gotta have sex,
Hmm.
and that's not good. And it's going back to what you're saying, like it's okay to be hypersexual, but it's not okay when you start putting yourself in jeopardy because you don't value yourself.
Yeah.
Um, and for a while when I was like trying to date women and stuff like that, I haven't dated in like 7 years or something like that. um but when I was trying to date women, it was like, I didn't value myself at all. Like I was just like, like other callers said, like, I felt like my purpose was only to like, get them off and not like really like, how can I, service them. And that was okay. Once I started dating, they were not dating, but like sleeping around with guys, it was actually a lot of them were pretty respectful from Grinder.
Mm,
There's like they fall into two camps. They actually cared or they didn't. Like,
mm,
and it was, you could tell pretty quickly. But I didn't care, and that was the problem. And a lot of times it's like I thought that I would feel bad about sleeping around like I do, but I don't. I just very apathetic to it. It's
mm,
an odd feeling.
mm.
Um, but I guess that's what it is.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to say all that. That I think it's to spread awareness that um, brain damage can cause that too, and to also be careful with that because you can set yourself up when you have brain damage and hypersexuality before abuse, that you can just get abused because of the dangerous situations you can find
Mm,
yourself in, and then it just compounds like that. It's like intersexual, like intersects like that.
yeah. Yeah, thank you for teaching me
But
something new. I had no idea about that. So that
yeah,
is I'm learning so many new things on this call-in show. So
yeah,
many
it's great. A
things.
lot of the callers are just nice people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm so thankful for
And
that.
But I want you to talk to more people. So I'm gonna
right.
end it here. It was great
Okay.
talking to you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming
Take
on. I
care.
really appreciate it. Bye.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. So I just had a thought because because for whatever reason, there's still 21 people on the line. So it is 3:40 and I've put the line down. I put the hard line down in the sand and I'm not going to be here past 4. So that means we've got 20 minutes. We got time to take 2 more calls. Um the thought I had was, if you can get through your call in 5 minutes, let's make it 5. But um to the next 2 people that I answer, um you know if you need 10, we'll do 10. But I really appreciate all the people that have called so far and their brevity. So I'm going to start my timer, sip my drink, and take the next call. Hello? Hello? Oh. Oh, hi there. Who am I speaking to and what is your true tea?
Sorry, I didn't realize it was on.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Okay. I am.
Hello?
Sorry, my voice is quiet. I'm very nervous right now.
Oh,
I
it's okay.
am Moira. I am a trans woman.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. So my first time. So like I was abused as when I was 10. Um, by a boy who was a little older than me, which is definitely where a lot of my hypersexuality comes from. I remember my first time I really felt bad from a sexual encounter was one from online, in basically a shady chat room type of thing. When I was 14, and I do really wish I would have listened to my body then. I felt really bad after that, but I just I just kept doing it for some years, basically that same situation.
Mm. Why do you think you were
Um,
doing it?
I'm not really sure. Like it just was a thing to do,
Mm.
and and I became really used to people not really caring about um how I felt, which definitely sabotaged the first real relationship I got in with someone that actually cared about me, because I just did not understand that they cared.
Mm. Yeah, I get that. I totally get that.
Yeah, so it ended very poorly just because I couldn't understand that they cared about me. And then I know immediately after, I pretty much got into a sexual relationship again. And like I realized like then that I was just doing it to hurt myself. Like I really didn't want it. Man, I thought it has like more to say here.
Oh, it's okay.
Uh,
I know this is a hard conversation to have.
yeah. Like I definitely feel like my hypersexuality prevented me from even like figuring out I was trans. Like I was just like so used to like my body just being a sexual object that I never really thought about it like for myself. Because like I actually didn't realize I was trans until earlier this year. So I haven't even known for a long time.
That's fairly as a lot of people figured themselves out in the quarantine.
Yeah.
So you're definitely not alone there.
Yeah. Yeah, I might have to like make this brief.
Yeah, that's totally okay. I know
Like, I don't
these are
think I
hard
have like much else to
conversations.
say here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you calling in and sharing the little bit of perspective that you did. It really means a lot. You're adding to such an important conversation.
Thank you.
All right. Bye. All right. So I'm just going to reset my timer once again and take the next call. We are down to the line, and I'm sorry to the 22 people who are still on the line. I'm not going to be able to take all these calls. I'm so sorry. All right. Hello.
Oh my God! Hello.
Hi there.
Oh, I didn't expect to get picked up.
Oh boy. You didn't hear a thing that said you were next? A lot of people have told me that they hear like a "you're next in line" message. I've never been on the
I
other
did
end of
not
this.
hear. No, you're all good. I didn't hear the "you're next," but I may have also just been so consumed by the conversation that was going on that it skipped over for me. My name is B, and I'm non-binary. I was born assigned female at birth, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experience very briefly. I know we're running out of time, but when I was younger, I had unfortunately an experience where I was groomed by someone I trusted who was older than me and a friend, and I ended up getting married to this person and moving overseas to be with them. And long story short, did not work out well. It was violent in more ways than one, and I left and I came back to the States, and I'm now in a much healthier, much more solid relationship, but I'm still struggling with a lot of the hypersexuality that came from that abuse that I experienced. And I'm in the process now of trying to figure out where that balance is, where I can, like, I've heard a lot of discussion about embracing like the hypersexuality and not feeling shame for it. And I guess I'm still in the process of deprogramming that from my brain, because my partner now is not super sexual. So my libido is much higher than his is. And it's weird when, I know you spoke before about like sex being a tool, and that's very much how it was for me in those moments. It was like what I brought to the table. It was what I had of value. And now to not be defined by that anymore, it's freeing, but it's also very confusing because that's just not what a majority of my life, what sex was. And I remember like I had not, I fell so deep in the hole because I thought everyone around me was lying to me, and I thought like it wasn't physically possible for me to have an orgasm. Like I thought everyone I spoke to about sex was like lying to me that this great thing, this really intimate like and wonderful experience you could have. I thought that was just fake. I thought everyone was just lying about it. And then when I had my first orgasm with my current partner, and he like left the room to go get water because we're all dehydrated, and I just like cry for a little bit by myself, and the feelings were so complicated because it was like I was happy that I had experienced that, but I was also so angry long to achieve this kind of intimacy when I had been so hypersexual and having all these sexual experiences with people in a really unsafe way.
Yeah,
and that's the bulk of what I had to say.
You are definitely not alone in that. There are a lot of people, especially people who are designated female at birth, who have never experienced that, or have always struggled to achieve that because of the situations they've been in with partners who were not as thoughtful or even invested in that at all for them. So you're definitely not alone there. But yeah, I mean, that's a rough position to be in. I know for me, in my last monogamous relationship, I had a similar sort of thing where when we officially decided to be monogamous, he caught me at like, I would say the height of my I don't know if I would say the height of my hypersexuality, because that's not true. He caught me at a different nuance of it. One where I was just very, very used to going out a lot with various men who I knew wanted to have sex with me. And I was just accustomed to that. And so when we got into a relationship and I realized how misaligned um our sex drives were, it was kind of rough for me, because I had really, basically up to the point of meeting him, um attributed so much value to being able to do that for a person that I had such a hard time understanding, like why he would even want to be with me if we weren't doing that thing, you know. Even though there's a bajillion different ways to interpret all of that, but just when it came to just me dealing with my own shit, I just realized like how much I hadn't really worked on the trauma that would put me in a position where I looked at sex in that way. I hadn't really ever, taken the moment to like actually, acknowledge and address the fact that sexual violence has probably influenced pretty drastically the way that I look at sex. Because my ex was like the first person who I had sex with who I actually loved. And I had sex with a lot of people before I met him. And it was one of those like, here's this person who I actually love, and I'm feeling, so much like, um, you know, we're not connecting in that one way, that I think for me, um, I had a hard time with it. I had a really, really hard time with it. And I'm glad that I'm in a point now where I can understand that, a man not wanting to have sex with you, or not, or having a different, sex drive has like literally nothing to do with you a lot of the time. Like it's not,
Right.
and it's not even, and it's really not like, oh my gosh, if a man doesn't want to have sex with you, that means like something really, it doesn't really mean much, really. I mean, it could mean something, but it doesn't always mean what I think we immediately assume it means. But where I had come from, it was just, I was so used to, you know, Like there was a time where I would just like go on dates with men and would get bored and would look them in the eye and say fuck me. Like, and that was such a
Yes.
common thing that I would do is I would go on a date, I'd be like, okay, well this is fucking boring. Fuck me, and that was
Let's jump in.
just
Yeah.
just do it, um which is, it's funny thinking about that now because I would never do that now, but like back then I used to do that to so many people, and I think I had a hard time um understanding and catching up with the fact that sex isn't, I mean, first of all, when your baseline is people who are creepy abusers and predators, it's like that already fucks up your
Mhm.
perception of how most men are, like it
Right.
when you think that most men are like the 50 and 60-year-olds who were fucking you when you were underage to early 20s, it's hard to like understand that like not everybody is like that, and them not being like that is probably like not a bad thing. So it's interesting,
Right.
like I identify a bit of where with a bit of where you currently are in your relationship. I know, I mean, I'm not suggesting this, but I know for me I wasn't really able to like unpack a lot of that until I was not in a relationship anymore. um and I've definitely reached like a happy place with it to where I'm not like the feelings of hypersexuality that I once had are not really there anymore because sex has really just changed. I found it really hard for me to sort through those feelings when I was in a situation where I was monogamous, and sex was really just this one thing that I was doing and not this. I didn't really have freedom. I guess that's kind of connecting some of the earlier conversations. We talked about like, you know, younger people not having like a healthy outlet. And I think that I had hit a point where I recognized that like I hadn't really ever been in like a position where I was like self-sustained, self-sufficient, not, like
Mhm.
fully loving myself in my body, and then also being interested in having sex or being open to having sex. And I kind of needed to have that freedom to be able to like reposition how sex factored into my life. And it was very, very hard for me to do that in the context of that relationship. Um, but we're just doing therapy for me at this point. But I connected a lot. It just made me think of that, and so I wanted to share it with you. Um,
We
but
love treatment. We're all about therapy over here.
yep, yes we are. Yes, we absolutely are. Um, but on that note, it is 3 minutes from 4, so I'm gonna go. Unless you have anything else to say?
No, I am all set. Thank you so much for hosting the platform, Kat. I appreciate it, and I love your work.
Oh, thank you for calling in and for listening to my stuff and for supporting my stuff. I think you've called before, yeah?
I have very briefly messaged in the chat before, and I think you
Okay.
called out my name, and then I got freaked out and I left. But
Okay.
but
Okay.
I watched though.
Well, thank you anyway for calling in, and hopefully you can call in again another time.
Yes, of course.
All
Thank you
right.
so much.
Bye. Okay, you guys. You know what? Can I just before we leave? So first of all, right now what I'm doing is I'm unlisting this video. Um, if you are on this chat right now and you would like to listen back to this, copy the link right now. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to actually see it. If you are, um, you know, lazy or a Patreon member, you can just, join my Patreon. That's where I'm going to post this. I edit these down, and I want to thank everyone who called in because holy crap, was this a good show? You guys did such a good job at staying within time. You did such a good job about calling in and giving concise stuff. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to answer all 22 people that were still on the line, but I really, really, really appreciate the calls that we had today. And I really appreciate the contribution that you guys have done to this conversation, the space that we've held for survivors here. It really, 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 really means a lot. Um, and thank you for respecting my time. Because now I'm gonna be able to like edit this and upload it, and it's gonna be great. So yeah, on that note, I will talk to you guys later. Thank you so much again. Oop, there goes my alarm. Stop. I had to set an I had to set an alarm so that, I made sure I was not on here past 4. Anyway, unfortunately we won't be doing a part 2. But I'm sure we'll have a bajillion conversations similar to this one where other people can call in. We do these call-in shows every other week in between our Crew T episodes. For those of you guys who are watching this and for some reason don't know that I have a podcast and that's why we're having this conversation, I have a podcast where you can listen to True Tea episodes every other week, and we have a call-in show in between them. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.